All right, let's jump into Barcelona, shall we? This deep dive is really going to be about going beyond the typical tourist experience. It's about understanding what makes this city tick.
Yeah, I mean, Barcelona is one of those cities that has it all, right? Ancient history, amazing architecture, vibrant culture. But there's also a lot going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. We've got a whole stack of sources here, academic papers, historical accounts, even a modern travel vlog. And it seems like one thing that keeps coming up is this idea of Barcelona as more than just a Spanish city.
Right. You can't really understand Barcelona without understanding Catalonia and its long history of striving for independence.
Okay, so Catalonia independence, what's the deal there for those of us who aren't history buffs?
Well, in a nutshell, Catalonia is this region in northeastern Spain with its own distinct language, culture, and a really strong sense of identity.
So it's like a country within a country.
In a way, yeah. They've got their own parliament, their own flag, their own national anthem, and they've had this ongoing push for greater autonomy, sometimes even full independence from Spain.
And this tension, this push and pull between Catalonia and Spain, it's been going on for centuries, right?
Yeah, for centuries. And it's really shaped Barcelona's character. I mean, you see it everywhere, from the language people speak on the streets to the political graffiti you might spot in some neighborhoods.
So it's not just about sightseeing in Barcelona. It's about understanding this underlying current of Catalan pride and the fight for self-determination.
Exactly. And one of the things that really brings this to life is this event they celebrate called the Diada. It's on September 11th and commemorates the fall of Barcelona in 1714 during the War of Spanish Succession.
So not exactly a party then.
Well, no, not exactly. It's more of a day of remembrance, kind of somber, but also a powerful display of Catalan identity.
Okay, so they're remembering this defeat, this loss of autonomy. What makes it so important to them today, though?
It's about resilience. Remembering their history even when it's been difficult or painful. And that resistance is a big part of their identity. It's even reflected in their national anthem, El Seguidors, which comes from a 17th century peasant revolt.
Wow, a national anthem born out of rebellion. That's pretty powerful.
It is. And it gives you a sense of the spirit of this place. They've been fighting for their identity for a long time, and they're not giving up.
So Barcelona's been trying to make a statement, to stand out on the world stage for centuries. And one of the ways they've done that, according to our sources, is by hosting some pretty big events, like world fairs and even the Olympics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Big events like that are a chance to showcase your city to the world, right? And Barcelona has used them strategically, for sure.
They've hosted two world fairs, right? One in 1888 and another in 1929.
That's right. And both times they went all out, big construction projects, trying to create this image of Barcelona as a modern and progressive city.
So tell me about some of those projects. What did they build?
Well, you see iconic landmarks pop up during those eras. The Arc de Triomphe, for instance, was built for the 1888 fair, and the Columbus Monument went up around the same time. They were making a statement.
They're saying, hey, world, look at us.
Exactly. But here's where things get a bit complicated. Some of the sources point out that, especially in the 1888 fair, they were kind of emulating architectural styles from other major European cities.
So is Barcelona trying to fit in or stand out? It seems like they were doing both at the same time.
That's the million-dollar question. And it's not a simple answer either. I mean, in 1888, there was this definite push to show that they were just as grand as other European capitals. But then, in 1929, under a very different political climate, the fair emphasized Spanish unity. It's like different political forces were using these events to push their own vision of what Barcelona should be.
So even something as seemingly straightforward as architecture gets tied up in this complex web of history and politics.
That's Barcelona for you. Nothing's ever simple. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
All right, so we've got this city that's trying to assert its own unique identity while also navigating these complex relationships with Spain and the rest of Europe.
Exactly. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of social and political upheaval. Remember we talked about the tragic week of 1909?
Oh, yeah, that workers' strike that turned into widespread violence and unrest.
Right. And that event, as tragic as it was, really gives us a glimpse into some of the deep tensions that were simmering beneath the surface in Barcelona at that time.
It's like we're seeing a totally different side to the city now. The shiny facade of the World Fairs is gone, and we're getting a look at the real struggles that people were facing.
Yeah, and those struggles played a huge role in shaping the Barcelona we see today.
And speaking of shaping Barcelona, we can't forget about the impact of the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole other chapter in Barcelona's story, and one that had a profound impact on the city's identity and its future. But I think we should save that for our next segment. We'll pick up there and explore how Barcelona navigated that conflict and how it emerged on the other side.
Sounds good to me. We'll be right back after a short break to dive into the Spanish Civil War and its impact on Barcelona. Don't go anywhere. All right, so we're back and ready to dive into the Spanish Civil War. What was Barcelona's role in all of that?
Well, it was right in the thick of it. I mean, the city became a stronghold for the Republican side, those who were opposed to Franco's nationalists.
So even with this national conflict going on, Barcelona is still holding on to that independent spirit, that resistance we were talking about.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about politics either, it was about defending their way of life, their community, their culture.
So they're fighting for their very identity, really.
Right. Exactly. And the sources we have really bring this to life. Those firsthand accounts from people who lived through that time. You can feel the intensity of the struggle and this incredible sense of solidarity.
It must have been a really difficult time, but also kind of inspiring in a way to see people coming together like that.
It was. And even after Franco's victory, that spirit of resistance didn't die out,
Yeah.
Barcelona remained a hub of dissent with underground movements and worker strikes and just this general feeling that they hadn't given up even though they'd lost the war.
That's powerful stuff. But when you think about Barcelona today, it's known for its beauty, its art, its food, its kind of laid-back vibe. You don't really think about this history of struggle and resistance.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because even in the travel vlog we watched for this deep dive,
Yeah.
it's all about those picture-perfect spots, right? The Sagrada Familia, Park Güell, the beaches. There's hardly a mention of this more tumultuous past.
Right, so people are kind of missing a huge part of the story, aren't they?
They are. And, some of the research we looked at found that a lot of tourists who visit Barcelona actually have a pretty limited understanding of Catalonia or its distinct identity.
So they're seeing the surface, but not really understanding what's going on underneath.
Right. And it's a shame because understanding that history, that struggle, those layers of identity, it really adds so much depth to the experience of visiting Barcelona. It makes you appreciate the city on a whole other level.
It's like you're only getting half the story if you don't know the history.
Exactly. But luckily, there are some initiatives that are trying to change that, to offer a more complete picture of Barcelona.
Oh, tell me about those.
Well, there's this thing called tactical tourism, for instance.
Tactical tourism, what's that?
It's basically about uncovering those hidden histories, those stories that aren't in the guidebooks. They take you to places connected to, say, anarchism or social movements or even sites related to the darker parts of the city's past, the things that aren't usually part of the tourist narrative.
That sounds amazing. Like you're really getting under the skin of the city.
It is. And there are several groups that organize these kinds of tours. So if you're looking for a more authentic experience, it's definitely something to check out.
I'll have to look into that for my next trip.
You should. So anyway, speaking of getting a more authentic experience, let's talk about what Barcelona's actually like today, beyond the tourist hotspots. How has this history shaped the city we see now?
Yeah, good point. We've talked a lot about the past, but what about the present? How does all of this history play out in modern-day Barcelona?
Well, it's a city that's constantly evolving, right? It's a place where history and modern life are constantly intersecting in these really interesting ways. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating. You've got ancient Roman ruins right next to cutting-edge architecture, and you've got centuries-old traditions influencing today's art and culture. It's all connected.
So they're embracing their history while also moving forward, looking to the future.
Exactly. And one of the things that I think really captures this is the city's urban landscape. I mean, we've already touched on those grand projects around the World's Fairs, right? But the city has gone through some major transformations, especially in recent decades.
Like what? What are some of the big changes they've made?
Well, the 1992 Olympics were a big turning point. They used that as an opportunity to redevelop the waterfront area, which had been pretty run down. Now it's this beautiful public space with beaches and restaurants and museums. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. I've seen pictures. It looks amazing. So they're really good at using these big events to kind of push the city forward, huh?
They are. And it's not just about making things look pretty either. They're really thinking about sustainability, about creating a city that's livable for residents, not just tourists.
I've heard about their Super Blocks initiative. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah, that's a really cool project. Basically, they're taking these big blocks in the city and turning them into these mini neighborhoods where they've limited car traffic and created more green spaces and pedestrian areas.
So it's like they're trying to reclaim the city for the people who live there.
Exactly. It's about making Barcelona a more human-centered city. And, it's not just about urban planning either. They're also doing a lot to preserve their cultural heritage, their language, their traditions.
Because at the end of the day, it's the people who make a city what it is, right?
Nice. Absolutely. And in Barcelona, the people are incredibly proud of their city, their history, their culture. And that's something you can really feel when you're there. There's this energy, this passion, this sense of community that's just infectious.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about history, politics, culture, urban planning. But what's the takeaway for our listener? What's the one thing we want them to remember about Barcelona?
Well, I think it's that Barcelona is a city of layers. It's a place where the past and the present are constantly in dialogue with each other. And it's a city that rewards curiosity, a city that invites you to look beyond the surface and discover its hidden depths.
It's a city that's got a lot to say.
It does, and I think it's a city that's still figuring itself out, still grappling with its identity, its place in the world. And that makes it a really exciting place to visit, I think. You get the sense that you're witnessing something special, a city in the midst of transformation.
I feel like we could talk about Barcelona for hours and still only scratch the surface.
It's true. There's just so much to uncover. Every time I go back, I find something new, some little hidden corner I've never seen before.
That's the best kind of city, isn't it? The kind that keeps surprising you.
Definitely.
So for someone like me who really wants to get that local experience, what would you recommend? Where should I go beyond those, those typical tourist traps?
Oh, there are so many great neighborhoods to explore. Gracia, for instance. It's a bit off the beaten path, but it has this really cool bohemian vibe. Lots of independent shops and cafes and just a really vibrant street life.
Okay, I'm writing that down. Gracia.
Huh.
What else?
Well, and this ties back to what we were talking about earlier, with the tactical tourism. There's some amazing walking tours that really delve into the city's history and culture.
Oh, yeah, those sounded really cool.
Yeah, there's one group in particular, Context Travel. They offer a bunch of different tours. One that focuses on the anarchist history of the city, which is fascinating. And another one that explores the legacy of the Spanish Civil War.
I'm definitely checking those out.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked history, politics, urban planning.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't forget about one of the main reasons people go to Barcelona, the food.
Oh, yes, the food. Catalan cuisine is a real highlight.
And it's not just about paella, right?
No. I mean, paella is great, but Catalan cuisine is so much more diverse than that. They've got this incredible seafood, amazing produce from the region, and all sorts of traditional dishes that have been passed down for generations.
So where do I go to try all this amazing food?
Yeah.
Any recommendations?
Well, you can't go wrong with the Mercat de la Boqueria. It's this huge market right on Las Ramblas, but it's more than just a tourist attraction. You can find the freshest ingredients there and some of the best prepared food in the city.
Oh, yeah, the Boqueria. I've seen pictures. It looks incredible.
It is. It's one of those places that really assaults the senses. All the colors, the smells, the energy, it's just amazing. If you want to experience the heart of Barcelona, you have to go there.
Sounds like a must-do. So we've covered a lot of ground here, the past, the present, the challenges, the hidden gems. But what about the future? What do you think the future holds for Barcelona?
That's a tough one. It's hard to predict the future, but I think it's safe to say that Barcelona is going to continue to be a city in flux, a city that's constantly evolving and adapting.
Yeah, they seem to be really good at that,
Mm-hmm.
embracing change and finding creative solutions to problems.
They are. And they're not afraid to experiment either, which is exciting. Like those super blocks we were talking about, that's a really innovative approach to urban planning.
It's a bold move for sure.
It is. And, who knows, maybe some of the things they're trying here in Barcelona will end up being models for other cities around the world.
So while we can't say for sure what the future holds, it's safe to say that Barcelona is going to continue to be a fascinating and dynamic city.
Absolutely. A city that will continue to surprise and delight visitors for years to come.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today and hopefully inspired them to plan a trip to Barcelona, or if they've already been, maybe see it with new eyes.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because Barcelona is more than just a pretty city. It's a place with a rich history, a complex identity, and a spirit of resilience that's really inspiring.
And it's a city that's constantly evolving and reinventing itself. So even if you've been before, there's always something new to discover.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Barcelona. We hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, Happy travels.